sneezed and snapped a little. Did not actually take a bite at the coach, but he wasn't loving it. But there you go, Gator and Gator. That will do it for the 11 o'clock news. Thanks for joining us. Hope to see you again tomorrow for the Fox 9 Morning News and back here at 11 o'clock with my pal Keith. Next up, it is Fox 9 All Day, which gets going in a couple seconds. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you again soon.
Welcome to All Day on this Wednesday, I believe it is here. Rob Olson in for Amy Hocker. The week's going quickly, and a lot of stuff going on today. We're going to begin with some testimony that's still going in Washington, D.C., where Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison are testifying before a House Oversight Committee on fraud in Minnesota, attempting to nail down what's been done, what was known, when it was known, were any things overlooked. That is part of the accusations we're certainly hearing from a lot of the questioning, certainly from the Republican side of the aisle today. It is still going on. It began 4 hours ago. So we're going to pop in here and take a listen for a little bit as the questioning here of Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison continues in Washington, D.C.
I'm not going to speculate on like I said, I can't characterize what it was.
Certainly you've heard the allegations that Mr. Ellison was working with individuals and that people were trying to reach out to him to try to avoid any kind of prosecution?
I don't know if I would characterize it like that. I couldn't do that.
How would you characterize it?
I don't know. I wasn't there. I just heard the clip you had.
How much fraudulent money has been recovered?
Oh, I don't have the number in front of me, but
I've heard the highest number is 80 million. I mean, that
could be. I can't verify that.
So it's reported that it's at most it's $80 million, and as we know, the amount that has been attributed to fraud in Minnesota alone is estimated, I think on the low end, the conservative side is $9 billion. I think the Trump administration says $19 billion.
Congressman, I don't see anything to show that, but what I've acknowledged is $1 too much. I think the local people and the folks who are taking count of this show it just at about $271 million.
Do you think the effort to return the money has been successful?
Oh, I can't speak to that. I don't have any part in that.
I think that returning 80 million out of let's say, assume it's just 9 billion, which would be it would be 0 or 0.08%, less than 1% of the money has been got.
Congressman, no one's saying the $9 billion other than a potential for that, and that would mean every dollar that's out there. And I think that was characterized last week by the U.S. Attorney's Office as saying that caused problems because there's no evidence to back that up. But I want to be clear. That doesn't make it any better. I just want to be clear. I hear you on the $300 million.
There's more work. Would you agree there's more work to do? If you're at 1% or less than 1%, there's more work to do.
I think if it's 99%, there's more work to do.
Last week you stated to the press that you have fired people who weren't doing their jobs. Is that correct?
What I stated is that people have been put into new positions, that we removed people from positions.
So you did not fire anyone?
So people stepped away.
Shuffled the decks on the Titanic.
I think they left. They left state government.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Mr. Timmons and then McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. Governor Walz, under your leadership, Minnesota has become the poster boy of fraud in America. Between the Feeding Our Future scheme and massive widespread fraud in autism and child care programs, your tenure will be defined by immense negligence, costing taxpayers at least hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. In 2019, in the first months of your administration, your legislative auditor found serious weaknesses in the child care assistance program, including inadequate attendance verification, repeat bad actors cycling through the system, weak enforcement, and employees who feared retaliation for raising concerns. Those warnings were specific, they were actionable, and they were documented. And you were already in office at this time. If, as you say, the buck stops with you, Governor, it's unclear when the buck actually stopped. In your written testimony, you listed multiple actions you have taken to curb fraud, yet clearly they were insufficient. as Minnesota ended up with 14 Medicaid programs deemed high risk, representing over $18 billion in spending. The buck didn't stop when whistleblowers were silenced years ago. It only stopped when you realized the fraudsters were drawing attention from people that you couldn't intimidate into silence. Fraud of this magnitude does not happen overnight. It builds slowly, and it's the result of institutional failures and poor leadership. So, Governor, my question is simple. If the buck stopped with you, as you said, who failed between 2019 and 2022, and why were they not held accountable?
Who failed in what, Congressman?
This fraud has been growing until recently, and you have been governor for many years.
No, well, thank you for the question, Congressman. And I would disagree with your characterization, obviously. And the legislative auditor, I don't know what the time period they investigated. Those are usually come months after they did it. We took office in January of 2019 and immediately started acting on what the OLA, the Office of Legislative Auditor, independent branch, started asking us to do, where we started changing the programs.
That's not what the record reflects. The record reflects that there were all of these whistleblowers, and they were being intimidated because alleged racism was the motivation behind the degree of enforcement.
Congressman, I've never got a chance to speak to these folks. What I will say is that, and my time in Congress proved that, I strongest whistleblower protections we can possibly have. We have plenty of opportunities.
We're not talking to every other state. We're talking to Minnesota because of the rampant fraud. So, look,
is there no fraud in any other states?
3 members of the Minnesota State House of Representatives, who all served on the Fraud Prevention and State Oversight Policy Committee, gave transcribed interviews that confirmed that your administration was aware of the fraud happening in the state, yet chose not to act due to fear of political repercussions and intentionally silenced whistleblowers who have tried to come forward.
Well, that's incorrect.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to insert this in the record. Roadmap to Program Integrity and Fraud Prevention. It's a report, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This report relays that several current and former Department of Human Services employees have described messaging from DHS leadership that emphasize compassion over compliance. So the former leaders have said that DHS should be guided by 70% compassion and 30% compliance. And then in 2023 DHS public presentation, leadership encouraged employees to embrace a 60-40 mindset. Again, that's 60% compassion and 40% compliance. I want to have as much compassion for people that need social safety nets. Like, I want to have 100% compassion, but we also have to have 100% compliance.
Agreed.
Or work as hard as we can to get there. And as you sit here today, and after acknowledging how widespread and pervasive fraud is in Minnesota, how should your state employees prioritize program compliance? What is your message to people now relative to this compassion compliance ratio?
Well, I think I agree with you on this, Congressman. I don't think it's an either or choice. We need to make sure we're not going to stop these programs. We're not going to stop being the top state for children in the country. But we need to make sure if we're going to continue those programs that we need to have fraud prevention and program integrity in. So I agree with you. It's not an either or, and it's not a percentage.
In order to give the benefits to the people that need them most, we have to be good stewards of tax dollars.
That's right.
And for every dollar that is stolen through waste, fraud, and abuse, that is a dollar that cannot go to people that need it most. So we need to prioritize compliance, make sure that we have the least amount of fraud possible. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Thank you.
I agree, Congressman.
Gentleman yields back. Next is Mr. McGuire from Virginia, then Ms. Luna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to our witnesses. Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison, what year were you made aware of rampant fraud in your state?
Well, Congressman, I think
the committee has spoken to nearly 30 whistleblowers, most of which are current employees in your administration. Based on these transcribed interviews, you were both made aware of the rampant fraud in your state around 2019-2020.
Did they make
Governor Walz, do you know who Janelle Sky Hansen is?
I do not. I was going to ask you,
Mr. Chairman, I seek unanimous consent to enter into the record article from CARE 11 titled CARE 11 Investigates Evicted Homeless Paying the Price for Minnesota's Fraud Crisis.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor Walz, Janelle Hansen, who goes by the name Sky, has autism. In June 2025, Sky, who was living in an apartment paid for by Integrated Community Supports, was evicted by police because her caregivers, American Home Health Care, LLC, who were subletting her apartment, stopped paying their rent. This provider claimed to provide this woman with 12 hours of daily individual services and billed ICS on an average of nearly $12,000 a month when she only interacted with them 2 hours per day. Because of this fraud, the woman has been homeless for 8 months. In fact, while Sky is homeless, the owner of American Home Health Care LLC lives in a high-end Maple Grove home which has an indoor basketball court. State Medicaid billing data shows since 2022, American Home Health Care has been paid more than $2.2 million in public funds. That is $2.2 million that was taken fraudulently from the taxpayers to pay for a man to live in a lavish home while people like Sky are left to live on the street. Governor Walz, this is despicable. You have a duty to serve the Minnesotans. You failed, and you failed to protect these individuals like Sky who needed it the most. I've had constituents tell me that after seeing all the fraud that has come to light in your state, that they aren't sure if they're paying taxes or if they are paying criminals. Governor Walz, Attorney General Ellison, yes or no, does your administration take whistleblower reports seriously? Yes or no?
Yes.
Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison, yes or no, do you believe that when faced with a whistleblower, the correct course of action is to retaliate against them and suppress their concerns?
No, of course not. It's illegal to do so.
Governor Walz, yes or no, are you aware of any instances of employees in Minnesota's Department of Human Services being threatened and intimidated with military surveillance to ensure they stay quiet about fraud?
I am not.
This is a picture of an email from Emmanuel Nwala at the DHS manager who has since been promoted to the leadership role. This email shows clear proof that the threatened employees with military surveillance, including, quote, I did intelligence research with the Army and give them IP addresses and email addresses to track specific locations. Governor Walz, yes or no, are you aware of this email?
I am not.
Governor Walz, Mr. Nwala, stated in the email that he was asked by upper leadership to hold off as they are doing their own thing on it. What did that mean? What did they mean by that?
I couldn't say. I'm unfamiliar with it.
Was upper leadership doing their own military surveillance on whistleblowers to intimidate employees and to staying quiet about rampant fraud?
I do not believe they would.
Moving on, Governor Walz, yes or no, do you agree that it would be intimidation to confront a whistleblower with photographs of their car, their house, and monitor their phone and computer and ask which schools their children go to?
Yes.
Governor Walz, yes or no, did the DHS investigators direct you to participate in these intimidation attacks against whistleblowers?
Could you restate the question, Congressman?
Were you directed to intimidate these whistleblowers?
Of course not, no.
Governor Walz, who is Shireen Gandhi?
She is the current commissioner of the department.
In her transcribed interview, Ms. Gandhi confirmed that DHS used outside entities to investigate DHS staff. Governor Walz, I think it's clear to the American people that your administration didn't take whistleblowers seriously and even further cultivated an environment of fear to intimidate employees from going public with the truth about the rampant fraud in your state and under your failed leadership. Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison, your incompetence and inaction to stop pervasive fraud when you were first alerted was not only defrauded taxpayers of $9 billion, but you have also failed to protect those who truly needed these services, such as Sky. Because of your failed leadership, that woman was evicted from her apartment and homeless on the street for 8 months. Leadership matters. Now, Governor, you abandoned your troops before deployment. Right before they deployed, you told your law enforcement not to cooperate with federal agents, which led to a lot of the problems in your state that you don't see happening around the country. And you abandoned Minnesota by allowing this fraud to continue. And so I understand I'm so glad that you have decided not to
Congressman,
run
that's untrue.
for re-election as governor. With that, I yield back.
Congressman, did you do 24 years in the military? Because I did. Was that not long enough for you?
I'm sorry, you're now interfering with my time, but as a veteran, he's a veteran too. I don't think that you need to compare service. No one's discrediting your service, but I think they're discrediting your ability to lead your state and protect against fraud,
My credit was being questioned, and I did 24 years.
Chair recognizes Ms. Luna from Florida.
Thank you, Governor.
Chairman, I would ask
my line of questioning is not for you. Please do not interfere with the witness's time. It's for your attorney
He didn't ask a question, so it is Ms. Luna's time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to be very clear about why we are here today and why both of you should be concerned. I've already sent criminal referrals to Attorney General Pam Bondi recommending that both Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison be investigated and prosecuted under 18 U.S. Code 371 and 18 U.S. Code 2. The U.S. Attorney Office estimates up to $9 billion in taxpayer money has been stolen on your watch, Governor Walz. Not a rounding error, not a typo, $9 billion, and both of you knew. Mr. Ellison, there's a widely reported recording of a meeting between you and Feeding Our Future on December 11th, 2021. At that meeting, those individuals that you were speaking to told you that the state investigators looking into fraud were acting in a, quote, racist manner. And your response was, and I'm quoting directly from the recording, "Let's just go fight these people." I want to ask you, what do you mean by fight these people?
Congresswoman, first of all, this matter I've responded in writing to this committee. I've written an op-ed about this matter. I have gone through several committees, one in the state, one in the Fed, one in the Senate, now here today, and it's very clear that these people were clearly liars. They were lying to me. They lied to judges. They lied to the state agencies. They were fraudsters. Everyone agrees that they are fraudsters. And
if I could, just because I'm a limit on time, though, I want to see, and I understand what you were stating. You're saying that you were essentially lied to. But in responding to them, and the reason I'm questioning on this is because I had the privilege of questioning some of your state legislators that were Republicans, and they did feel that both you and the governor were covering up what was happening with the fraud. So I want to specifically just who are you referencing when you said fight these people? If you could, just keep it short. Was that your own state?
Congresswoman, these people represented themselves to be business people who were having difficulty with the bureaucracy.
Okay.
They contacted me and they wanted to know what, can you possibly help us? What I did is investigate their claims and then work with the federal authorities to see 57 of them convicted of crimes, and about, I think, more than 80 now indicted. So these people presented themselves as someone needing help and honest business people. They were not what they claimed to be, and we helped them get convicted as they well should be.
Thank you for clarifying, but just to be clear, it would be the bureaucracy, would you say, within your own state? Is that you were saying fight these people as in the bureaucracy within your own state, correct?
Congresswoman, I was in Congress for 12 years.
Thank you for serving.
I did constituent services all the time.
Okay, so I'm not going to get anywhere on this question. That brings me to my next thing. Do you believe that it is racist to investigate someone of fraud because they are of Somalian descent? Yes or no?
Ma'am, I believe that anybody who commits fraud of any background should be investigated and held accountable.
Okay, well, I would actually agree with you on that one, so thank you for clarifying. But to be clear, those individuals that you told the Department of Human Services were basically, it was racist, and if you were looking into it for fraud. You took that meeting, you made that promise, and then it turns out that the billions of dollars in fraud continued. And I hate to bring this up because I am a parent, but your own son also received donations from those same individuals. Imam Omar, the man that you invited you and is listed a partial owner of an entity that was used to launder over $40 million in Feeding Our Future funds. I would say that you did mislead the public. Whether or not you at the time realized what they were up to, the fact is that you were then presented with the evidence, and it does feel, and according to your own state legislators, that you did not take that seriously enough. In my opinion, if you have that— I would
disagree, ma'am.
I'm telling you what my opinion is. I don't believe that that was a question, but I do believe, based on the recording, based on the fact that you were personally tied to it, and based on the fact that your family then had ties to it as well, seems a little sus. Aside from that, though, you're telling the American people essentially that maybe you didn't know about it when dozens of your own employees were afraid as being labeled as racist or Islamophobic if they stayed silent. And so I just want to be clear about something. You've stated and you agree that anyone should be investigated based on, regardless of their background. But the fact is that your own employees came forward and were actually afraid of actually looking into that fraud because they did not want to be labeled as Islamophobic or as maybe xenophobic. So you dismiss this, as President Trump said, as politicizing the issue, when $9 billion is not a political talking point. It's an embarrassment. The American people see what's going on, and this is fraud. I would say, and I would also advise the Attorney General to look into our criminal referrals. I do not believe that you guys could say that you didn't know what was happening, because frankly, even if, let's say, giving you the benefit of the doubt, you might not have known, you guys still chose to turn a blind eye to it. Thank you, Chairman. I yield my time.
Gentlelady yields back. And before I recognize Mr. Langworthy, our last questioner, I want to say Congressman Jack is on the Rules Committee, and everyone knows that they put in long hours. He's actually managing the floor. If he doesn't make it back in time after Mr. Langworthy, I want to put into the record, Representative Jack is leading debate on the floor, but will submit his questions for the record. So with that, I recognize Mr. Langworthy from New York.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Governor, you have served as governor of the state of Minnesota for nearly 7 years. Why did it take you until 2023 to launch an investigation under an inspector general into this massive fraud that's been uncovered?
I don't believe that timeline's correct, Congressman. As I said, we were making changes, and this has been being worked, and these cases have been brought forward years before.
But your administration did hesitate for years to fully investigate this fraud. Was it because you were concerned about you're the de facto leader of the Democratic Party of Minnesota as a governor? Were you concerned about the political consequences within the Minnesota Democratic Party's voter coalition? Did that lead to you making that mistake? Because trying to listen to the answers today and come up with a conclusion as to why you would turn a blind eye to this for so long, when so many people from your partners in government across the aisle, but also people at the street level, saw this fraud going on in plain sight.
Well, we did not, and I know that the rest of the country saw this recently. And what I would ask you, Congressman, is what benefit would there be to that? Just assume there's no ethics involved, which I have a long history here of doing that. There's certainly no benefit in taking money from programs that I've advocated for that make Minnesota the best state to live. And so we worked it from the beginning. And look, these folks continue to move. They're a moving target. We went back to the legislature asking for more tools. We went back last year and asked for more tools. And now what's great is Republicans are actually supporting those things that we put forward. So as soon as
Governor, Republicans came to this committee last month and testified the fact that they've been trying to get people's attention in power in Minnesota for a long time.
I would disagree with their characterization.
Well, so you state that unequivocally there was no political consideration based on constituents in the Democratic Party.
Absolutely
that you
not.
turned a blind eye.
Absolutely
now
not.
That's interesting, that, Governor, because your first reactions in December 2025 were to call taxpayer conspiracy theorists and dismiss concerns about the $9 billion in fraud as white supremacy. And on December 23rd, you stated, this is what happens when they scapegoat, and this is what happens when you no longer hide the idea of white supremacy. You immediately went there. And
I believe I was speaking about the ICE invasion in Metro Surge. I'm unfamiliar with where you're quoting from.
This is when this fraud was uncovered. Knowing now that those people were correct, would you apologize to those constituents for classifying them?
I'm unfamiliar with what you're asking for. I've heard today attacks on the Somali community that I would view as racist trope thrown at the Somali community.
Okay, Governor, I understand you need to deny and deflect, and your stories are pretty legendary at this point. But while you were looking the other way at fraud that took place on your watch, you and your ticket mates in the Democratic Party.
All right, we've been listening into continuing testimony and questioning in Washington, D.C., the House Oversight Committee looking at fraud in Minnesota, questioning Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison there, and you can hear how contentious this gets. Ostensibly, these are about gathering evidence and testimony. Sometimes that happens. Oftentimes it becomes just a way for lawmakers to express their own views and opinions and make statements. We saw that from Democrats as well, who often turn this into making statements about the recent Operation Metro Surge, the ICE activity in Minnesota. So a significant part of this has been focused on that, even though that connection to fraud is limited. Certainly the response of bringing agents in initially was connected to responding to fraud reports. So that's sort of the tie there. But again, you see this where there's some questioning. There's a lot of asks for yes and no answers. And then there's a lot of people that just are simply stating opinions, again, from both sides of the aisle here, depending on the topic. We're going to continue keeping an eye on this, but we do have to take a quick break here on All Day. We'll be right back. Welcome back to All Day Live here on Fox 9 on this Wednesday. We've been watching this House Oversight Committee in Washington, D.C. Again, this testimony started about 8 o'clock this morning, continuing with Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison here, answering questions about fraud in Minnesota, what they did, what they didn't do, what they knew, what they didn't know. A lot of accusations, opinions, defense. It is just wrapping up now. We see they just finished their closing statements here. So this is again a committee hearing that has been going on for 4.5 hours, roughly, maybe a little bit less than that. I don't think they started right on time, but now in recess here. That's the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. Kara, in the booth, I think we did have something cut from earlier. Maybe we want to go to that, and that was a back and forth with Congressman Tom Emmer of Minnesota and Attorney General Ellison, and it kind of really shows how this can become a bit testy at times, very confrontational, very much accusatory. And Kara, if we've got that queued up, let's show a little bit here of the interaction between Congressman Emmer and Attorney General Ellison. Oh, we're still trying to get that up here. Pardon us. We had this cut to show you earlier. We're ready to go to that, Kara? Okay, here it is.
So according to your office, sir, you have been deeply involved in the Feeding Our Future case since September of 2020. That actually sounds like you are saying that at the time of your infamous meeting with the Somali fraudsters, you were already aware of the allegations of fraud. When you had this meeting in December 2021, did you know, sir, about the long-running FBI investigation into Feeding Our Future? Yes or no?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Representative Emmer.
Reclaiming my time. When did you personally become aware of the FBI investigation? That's all I'm asking.
Representative Emmer, as you know, I have addressed this issue many times.
All right. Reclaiming my time. In that same meeting with the fraudsters, Mr. Attorney General, you took aim at the Minnesota Department of Education. You stated that the Minnesota Department of Education had fought the nonprofit in very disgusting ways, in a very racist, xenophobic, and Islamophobic manner. You actually asked for the names of all these folks who are just hung up and offered to call the Minnesota Department of Education to, quote, demand some explanations. We now know that when you made these comments, the Biden DOJ was working with the Minnesota Department of Education and that their work exposed the massive fraud ring. Pretty bad look for you, sir. Either you were oblivious to what was going on under your nose, or worse, you were trying to obstruct the work of the Minnesota Department of Education. So I can see the time is getting short. Mr. Chairman, we are left with two questions. One, what did Governor Walz and Keith Ellison know about the fraud? And two, when did they actually know it? I would suggest that if they do not give direct and truthful answers to both these questions at this hearing, then they both need to be put under oath in a deposition. This is a serious thing, Mr. Attorney General. You are the only one who thinks protecting taxpayer dollars is political. Mr. Ellison, my concern is that you actively obstructed this investigation in exchange for campaign donations, a quid pro quo. If these concerns are proven to be true, you should be disbarred and you should go to jail.
There you go. You see how testy this can get. That was from earlier this morning. And again, this more than 4-hour hearing in Washington, D.C. They're referring to a recording of a meeting in Attorney General Ellison's office that occurred with members of people that were then indicted and convicted related to feeding our future. This was a recording that was originally going to be used as evidence in a trial last year that I covered. And I listened to that entire recording. It was made by Amy Bach, who was convicted and now imprisoned for her role in the Feeding Our Future fraud. And in that, they represent themselves in this meeting is a minority business group. It is some 14 or 15 minutes into the meeting where they start bringing up the child food program, which Attorney General Ellison seemed to be unfamiliar with and was asking about. So then he said they initially said that they were having issues with the minority businesses and state agencies, which he said he would look into, and then it got into the food program. There was mentions of campaign contributions, in which in the recording you can hear him say, I'm not here about that. This is about my job here. There were donations made a couple of weeks later, and I believe at least a portion of those at some point had then been returned. It was unclear exactly how much and at what point that was returned. But that continues to be a point, certainly, of contention, is they're being questioned about their roles in, again, what they knew and what they didn't know, as Congressman Emmer there pointed out. All right, got to take a break here, but coming up here, last week, a group of high school counselors went to the state capitol to ask lawmakers for more support. And one of those counselors, Anna Miller, who works for Minneapolis Public Schools, spoke about her experiences as a counselor. So after the break, Amy Hockert had a chance to have a conversation with that counselor about what these challenges are, what they're facing in the state, and the impact on students. But first, as we go to break, had a pretty foggy morning today, heading towards another day approaching 50, maybe higher, and certainly warmer weather to come. So here's Keith Marler with a look at the forecast.
Well, those dense fog advisories just kept getting extended over the course of the morning, slowly eroding. Metro, last to see those go around lunchtime today, giving up into bluer afternoon, a brighter afternoon, but that fog, less than a quarter-mile visibility from most of us across the area, certainly the Metro, well into the late morning. And as we go into the afternoon, again, allowing that to just kind of burn up and give way, letting those temperatures finally climb through the 40s and heading into the lower 50s today. We've had to trim those highs down a little bit thanks to our slow start, especially here in the Twin Cities with that extra fog hanging on in there. Again, a shallow layer, but when it just doesn't give up, it won't allow us to warm up because it does block that sun from getting to the surface. But once it does, it's a quick flash because that sun very high in the sky and we catch up with everyone else. So plenty of sunshine still on deck for our midweek mellow this afternoon, still looking at those 50s. Overnight tonight, patchy cloud cover, probably some more fog developing, and then into tomorrow afternoon, partly sunny sky, still 50s for highs into the day on Thursday, and then Thursday night into Friday, a wave of moisture heads our way. Looking at rain showers rolling on into the area, maybe even some thunder possible by Friday night, but just as likely on the top side of this, a little snow mixes on in. We could see some of that kind of wrapping around as it gives up into our early Saturday morning as a little wintry mix here in the metro. Overall, we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll see how that evolves as we go on into tomorrow and Friday's forecast. But we will cool off a little bit into Saturday before a bigger bump of warmth heads our way into Sunday and Monday. Before today, we're still calling it midweek mellow, getting rid of this extra low cloud and fog cover into some decent sunshine for the afternoon, highs in those lower 50s. A few clouds tonight, patchy as they may be, with fog redeveloping at 36, and then warm streak just continues. Highs in the middle 50s with partly sunny sky into your day on Thursday. A chance for some rain showers rolling on in Thursday night and into your day on Friday, and possibly a little weak clap of thunder on Friday evening, Friday night, and again some snow mixing on in with that into early Saturday morning before the moisture just kind of falls apart. Then back to some sunshine, but cooler 40s. That's still above average. Average high for this time of year is the middle 30s. We'll get there about a week from today, but before then, we're going to push it again up into the 60s by Sunday and Monday. Beautiful weather as daylight saving time kicks in this upcoming weekend. Our sunsets will be after 7 p.m. starting on Sunday evening. We'll fall back to the 40s with extra clouds building on Tuesday, and not only do the 30s come back, we might get a little moisture in here too as we head on into the middle days of next week.
Please consider supporting your school, your local school counselor. Use your voice to speak up on behalf of our students because they deserve an education.
Well, plea from high school counselors at the state capitol. They're urging lawmakers for help. They point to some stunning statistics, including one that says Minnesota is 48th in the nation in counselor to student ratio. Bottom of the list there, 48th. Anna Miller is a counselor at Anderson United Middle School in Minneapolis, and one of the people who is asking the legislature for more help. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Amy, for having me.
There are a lot of people involved here in our kids' well-being at school, social workers, counselors, school psychologists. You're representing the counselors. What's a typical day for you, Anna?
Right. So school counselors are a part of student support teams. We work hand in hand with teachers, with social workers, with school-based therapists, school psychologists. But what makes a counselor unique is that counselors are career and college focused. So my degree is actually a master's in the science of education, and we combine 3 domains. It's social, emotional, and personal services, It's academic support and skills training and college and career preparation and post-secondary future in general. So a typical day for me might look like meeting with students, whether it's one-on-one or in groups, working with families, collaborating with teachers, administrators, other folks in the building, and kind of on a case-by-case basis, helping students, but also providing classroom lessons and activities and resources to the whole school, because we work with all students. We're a general education service to access post-secondary future options.
Okay, before we get to the ask and what you guys are hoping to gain here, I want to understand what the challenges have been lately. I'm sure this is not the first time, counselors have gone to the legislature, but what specifically is driving you guys right now?
Right. So obviously not just my school, but our city and our country has been going through a moment in time where our students who are immigrants, our students who are trying to access an education but are afraid to come to school, are going through a lot of stress. And so at this time in particular, it's really important to shore up those supports because students have had interrupted education. We've had a lot of students learning online. We've had students who are not attending school. Part of being a school counselor is being data driven. So our attendance data, our grade data, the missing work data, it all shows that students they're going through interrupted education right now. So if there was any time to invest in the type of coaching a school counselor can give a student and these services, it would be now, because a lot of our students have already had their education interrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And now, once again,
yeah, and a couple of things that I think that I saw that you were asking for, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like hoping for, the goal being 80% of a counselor's time spent in that direct one-on-one support for students and then you can kind of help me fill in the blank of what that specifically looks like, but also having a counselor in every school. So that is already not the case, I'm assuming.
It is not the case. So there are 700 schools or more in Minnesota that don't have a school counselor. And a lot of these schools are elementary schools. So the types of skills that we teach, we can begin right away when a school gets a student. The skills that we work on include like emotional regulation, time management, organization, academic skills. And these are things that can lead to successful outcomes, post-secondary outcomes, and you can start very early. So it really is a disservice to students that we are, as you said earlier, 48th in the nation as well for student to school counselor ratio, meaning that even if your school does have a counselor, they might have 500 students, 600 students to work with, when the recommended caseload from our from the ASCA Association for American School Counselors is 250.
And obviously, one school to another school is going to be completely different. Everybody does it a different way, has so many resources. But will there be cases where, as we specifically talk about a school counselor, I think in a lot of people's minds, the counselor equals therapist or someone that a student can go to and kind of sit there for an hour and just unload and their mental health. But it sounds like it's more than that. It's more targeted than that. In some schools, though, if funding a school counselor in a school that doesn't already have one, is that a catch-all for everything, or how would that look moving forward?
Well, in some ways, yes, because school counselors are uniquely positioned to work with all students. The requirement to meet with a school counselor is just that you're an enrolled student in the school. You don't have to meet any criteria to meet with a school counselor. We're a general education service for everybody to access. So because there are less barriers to working with a school counselor, it does allow more students to access services. The important thing to remember too is that we're called school counselors now, but the old language was guidance counselors. And guidance counselors came about to increase, success in STEM and math and in computer technology, and to shore up our workforce here in America and create opportunities for students to succeed. And that is still the case, even though we're not called guidance counselors.
That's I'm glad you made that point. I think those of us from older generation, that will help us understand a little bit more of the role. And then finally, I just want to ask you about, cost. Clearly, there are so many needs in so many different places in our schools right now. What have you guys thought about as far as like the cost of this and what kind of an uphill climb this might be?
Right. So the bill we were specifically speaking about, it does not outline a funding source, and that is a place for growth in our state. I think a funding source specifically for school counselors could help to ensure that students continue to get these services and continue to prepare for careers that we don't even know if they exist yet. Right now we have all these AI and computer technology careers. So who's going to keep up with that to train our children of the future? And I would also say, too, with school counselors, because the science of school counseling takes years to learn, it is more costly. You're paying for a licensed educator. My background, for example, is in neuroscience. I also have a master's in science and education. So I acknowledge that the cost to hire a school counselor, it can be prohibitive at times. But I would say that the data that shows that students have better outcomes is worth it in the long run.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to following this Senate bill as it makes its way through. Really appreciate your time today and insight into the kind of work that you all do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy.
All right, a conversation Amy Hockert had. Appreciate you bringing that to us. Some other headlines here on this Wednesday. It was last evening that we learned that one of the 6 service members killed during the strikes in Iraq, the conflict there, is from Minnesota. A White Bear Lake woman, 39-year-old Nicole Amour, died on Sunday. She was killed when a drone hit a command center in Kuwait. Amour leaves behind a husband, 2 children, a son who's a high school senior and a daughter in 4th grade. Her husband says she was an avid gardener who enjoyed making salsa, liked to rollerblade, liked to bike with her daughter. Again, one of 6 service members who have died in what the White House is now calling Operation Epic Fury. Now, this morning, we got an update from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth on that operation, saying the war in Iran could last as long as 2 months. Hegseth said a U.S. ship did sink an Iranian warship in the Indian Ocean last night. He said it was a submarine that used a torpedo, the first time a ship had been sunk by a torpedo since World War II. He stopped short of a definitive timeline, but did say the war could stretch up to 8 weeks, after the White House had initially suggested maybe 4 to 5 weeks.
We're playing for keeps. Our warfighters have maximum authorities granted personally by the president and yours truly. Our rules of engagement are bold, precise, and designed to unleash American power, not shackle it. This was never meant to be a fair fight, and it is not a fair fight. We are punching them while they're down, which is exactly how it should be. Thus far, Operation Epic Fury has delivered twice the air power of shock and awe of Iraq in 2003, minus Paul Bremer and the nation building. The campaign has 7 times the intensity of Israel's previous operations against Iran during the 12-day war, 7 times. And as President Trump said, more and larger waves are coming. We are just getting started.
All right, again, an update on the operations in Iran right now. Also today, an update on a story that our Paul Bloom covered for us yesterday on All Day Live, and that is from as U.S. Attorney Daniel Rosen was brought in for a contempt hearing in federal court. A U.S. district judge telling attorneys he's now not ruled out imprisonment over ICE conduct and court order violations. The judge demanded U.S. Attorney Rosen to explain why the government violated multiple court orders in more than 24 cases connected to Operation Metro Surge. Violations included the lost or delayed return of personal belongings of immigrants the court had then released from custody, including jewelry, driver's licenses, and cell phones. The judge saying it could be a historic low point for the U.S. Attorney's Office if he did have to hold anybody in contempt. The court hearing was fiery at times, included some tense back and forth exchanges between Rosen and the judge. Also on Capitol Hill today in D.C., Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem testifying again in front of the House Judiciary Committee. With a lot here, a lot of questions about her role in Operation Metro Surge and what has happened there. I believe we have a clip of a bit of her testimony from earlier this morning.
Madam Secretary, who was it that ordered you to deny state and local law enforcement agency access to the Alex Preddy crime scene? Was it Donald Trump? Was it Pam Bondi? Was it Kash Patel? Or was it Corey? Whose idea was it?
Congressman, I will tell you it is not my role as the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security to conduct investigations at the federal level.
I'm asking who was it that instructed your agents to deny access to the crime scene to state and local law enforcement agents?
I wish there would have been more local law enforcement there that day. The reason that
they were there, but your agency prevented them from accessing the crime scene. Who was it that gave that order to deny access to the crime scene?
Sir, I don't make those decisions on
who made the decision?
I will tell you that within the agency,
whose decision was it?
Within the agency, for incidences
was
that there is
Corey's
internal
idea?
Investigations, they go through the office of
okay, well, you're
PR,
not going to answer. You're not going to answer my question. That's fine, ma'am. I'm going to reclaim my time. As the Secretary of Homeland Security, you are the ultimate overseer of your department's investigations into the death of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. Isn't that correct?
We conduct investigations within ICE and CBP.
Okay, fine. You're responsible for it. That was my question.
To the officers to make sure they follow
within hours of these killings, you jumped before the cameras on national TV and lied about these victims, labeling them domestic terrorists before the investigation had even begun. Even your own ICE director has now admitted that they are not terrorists, and that kind of comment could bias the investigation. Secretary Noem, will you acknowledge that your lies labeling Ms. Good and Mr. Preddy as domestic terrorists could bias the DHS investigation into their killings?
These investigations are ongoing. They're internal and
couldn't your
external.
Comments have signaled
the Incident Review
what
Committee
the conclusion of the investigation
any
should
actions
be?
that will take it, and within CBP, it's the National Use of Force Board that does those evaluations.
What you did was
They'll
actually
continue to do
prejudice
that.
the investigations that your department is conducting, Madam Secretary.
Yeah, Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem facing questioning this morning in D.C. And again, this is another example of how it depends on which party is asking the question. Here to the people who are testifying, where it becomes very contentious and accusatory, and then it can drift towards complimentary. But again, you see this back and forth in all of these committee hearings here, depending on the topic and depending on the partisan nature of the questioning. We're going to take a quick break here on All Day Live. It's coming up on towards 1 o'clock here on this Wednesday as we warm up, hopefully burn that fog away, melt some more of that snow. Looking much better out there now with some more blue sky. We'll be right back on All Day Live.
Are you ready?
Welcome back to All Day Live. Kara Savage in the booth with us today. We got some, it's kind of nice. We got some stuff to talk about here that's not contentious and partisan and people bickering or grilling each other. And that is this. Last night, Kirill the Thrill adding another thrill late in last night's game at Grand Casino Arena. It was a late game. They didn't start till almost, what, 8:45 or so. But he got an empty netter at the end, which now puts him at the all-time goal record for the Minnesota Wild with 220 goals. One ahead of Marian Gaborik, who held the record of 219 since 2009, Kara. That record had been there a long time. Oh, I can't hear you.
Oh.
Now I can hear you.
Okay. Did you see the interview after the game when he was just kind of like, yeah, got to get a few more? Just, he didn't really, he was
I
like,
did.
yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of typical of those guys.
Yeah.
You know, I've been over there for talked to some of them, and you know, they just get so, I don't want to say unenthused. Obviously, they're very excited, and you could see his expression after he got that empty netter, but,
right.
you know, and everyone congratulating him. But you know, then they just sort of kind of like, afterwards.
Yeah.
But it's pretty, and you could tell he hit the post. For the non-hockey folks, that's the steel around the outside of the net. A couple of times in that game, trying to get to the record setter, and then there was another time when I believe it was Boldy had passed to him. Like trying to set him up for it, because I think it's clear that they wanted him to break that record at home, because now they're going on the road, and so it's better. And so it's not as exciting when you do it with an empty net goal, but still, it counts the same.
Yes, very fun. And another hockey thing this week, starting today, is the Minnesota Boys State Hockey Tournament. I don't know if you're into that.
Yes, and I haven't had a chance to tune into any of it today because we've been busy. But Class A, the single A, the 11 a.m. game was Dodge County versus Hibbing Chisholm VCA, which is interesting because you're taking sort of, the hockey Iron Range, Hibbing Chisholm, area versus Dodge County in southern Minnesota. I'm curious to see. I know that there's been Dodge County, that area. I mean, there's been a push to really strengthen the hockey down there.
Yeah.
So I haven't had a chance to see. And then starting here in a little bit, St. Cloud Cathedral, Matamidi. And then this afternoon, Mankato West, Delano. And then Northern Lakes, which is a consolidated thing around the Pequot Lakes area, versus War Road, another hockey powerhouse area. So that's always fun to watch. You were commenting about all the bleached hair.
I did. Yeah, I just saw one little clip of them at 11 a.m. and there's just a lot of bleached hair. They're all trying to win the hockey hair competition, but I think we got to mix it up. You can't just have bleached hair.
You mean like it should be colors, or should be, what do you?
Or like, I like when they just get all into the mullets and whatever, but when they just bleach it, it's like, okay, you could have committed a little bit more.
Oh, you think that's just the lazy way out?
Yeah.
That's just the easy
way out.
Just to break out the bleach in the locker room.
Yes.
It's always interesting to see which kids, players do it and which don't, because there's some that they're all in on the hockey hair, and others, aren't.
Yeah.
Maybe they've got family photos coming up. I don't know. Maybe, who knows? But that is kind of fun to see, and it's an exciting time down at the now Grand Casino Arena. So getting underway, which feels like it's early this year, and I don't know why that is. It's not, but I don't know. It just sort of came up quickly.
Yeah, for sure. We need to take a break here, so.
Oh, we should mention though before we go that along with golf, because the joke is, especially in the NHL, once their hockey season's done, their golf season's begun. And driving range at Emerald Greens and Hastings opening today. That's a course that I play a lot. I live down in that part of town. So they're opening the range.
It's a great course.
Bunker Hills and Coon Rapids had opened a couple of weeks ago briefly when it warmed up. So we're starting to see the golf courses trying to get back to life here. Do you golf?
I do golf, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm excited. I'm waiting for a few more driving ranges closer to me to open up, but Emerald Greens isn't too far out of my way.
Yeah, and they are pretty well known for opening their courses too. They got 2 18 holes there, and as often as if it's playable, they'll take your money.
Yep.
And so it's kind of fun down there to get down and see what's how many people show up out there.
Right.
All right, you want to take a quick break?
Yes.
And we'll recap some of this news of the day. Certainly a lot of it coming out of D.C. today, and certainly out of the state capitol as well. So a lot more to come. We'll be right back. Welcome back to All Day Live on this Wednesday. Rob Olson sitting in for Amy Hocker today, and a lot to talk about that's happened this morning. Certainly that just wrapped up, in fact. Some big testimony in Washington, D.C. today, where Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison were testifying before a House Oversight Committee about fraud in Minnesota. This, again, just broke maybe about half an hour ago or so. So it went pretty close to, 4.5 hours in D.C. Republican lawmakers attempting to nail down when, Walz and Ellison knew about fraud, when they first heard about it, what their offices tried to do about it, what they knew and when. Democrats, on their questioning, much more sympathetic. They're often bringing up the presence of ICE agents in Minnesota over the past couple of months. Now, Jim Jordan, a Republican, opened questioning during today's testimony, and it got a bit fiery there as well. Let's watch some of that.
Why didn't you tell the truth? Why didn't you just tell the truth about the Feeding Our Future program? This program, my understanding, received $3 million the first year. Within a couple years was getting $200 million of taxpayer money. Whistleblowers raised concerns. As the chairman said, auditors raised concerns. Everybody raised concerns. March 30th, 2021, the payments are stopped. And a little over a month later, the payments are restarted. Why didn't you tell the truth about why you restarted the payments?
Well, Chairman, we did tell you, and Feeding Our Future grew because of the pandemic. And I
asked that question. I said, why didn't you tell the truth about why you restarted the payments? The payments stopped because there were concerns, obviously. We wouldn't stop the payments. Then they're restarted a month later. What was the reason for restarting the payments?
My understanding was the agency believed that the court had required them to make those payments.
And that was false, wasn't it? You repeated that. You said that, didn't you? You said that's why the reason. You said the reason you restarted is because the court ordered you to do so. Is that right?
I don't believe that is settled yet, to the best of my knowledge.
Well, I think it is, because the court did something that I just don't. I don't know if I've ever seen it. They issued a statement saying you were wrong in what you were saying. This is from the court. It says, Feeding Our Future versus Minnesota Department of Education, correcting reports and statements by Governor Tim Walz concerning orders issued by the court. Here's what the judge says. Governor Tim Walz told the media that the Minnesota Department of Education attempted in payments to FOF because of possible fraud, but that Judge Guthman ordered payments to continue in April 2021. Next sentence. That is false. So you said something wasn't true. He further states this, Judge Guthman, the court says this, Judge Guthman never ordered the Department of Education to resume payments to Feeding Our Future in April 2021 or at any other time. So I want to know, why didn't you tell the truth?
Congressman, the attorneys at the Department of Education interpreted that differently. Both of those judges are no longer on the bench.
Yeah, so there you go. I mean, and that's Karen Scullin joining us now, too, because you're working on trying to dissect all this today, which is, again, it was 4.5 roughly hours of testimony here.
Right, and part of that, of course, you know, as is with every committee hearing, you know, one side, you know, may stick to the topic, and then the other side, in this case, the Democrats, will go off on another topic, and they talked a lot about ICE. So that does take up a lot of the 4.5 hours. The focus, though, was supposed to be on fraud and what they knew and when they knew it,
what they did and what they didn't do. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
And in this case, you know, they're talking about this court ruling in you know, what Jim Jordan was just talking about there is this court ruling in Ramsey County, because Feeding Our Future had brought the state to court over halted payments or halted approvals, too, of new food sites. And there was this kind of representation that his ruling ordered them to restart payments. And he had to clarify, and the court had to clarify, that it didn't technically order them to restart payments. I think the ruling was more along the lines of that maybe they exceeded their authority to halt payments. You know, it was even a lot of that got very confusing in the time, and that was, you know, that was in late 2020.
Agree. A lot of confusion with this, with that portion of this was what exactly did the court say, and I think there was clarity there in that there was no court order to resume payments, and yet they did. And then why they did, to me, was also not clear. I didn't, but you know, Ellison and Walz didn't necessarily have an opportunity to voice why they restarted payments, or why Walz restarted payments, but that was the big question, is why they did.
And there was a lot of that too. You know, you mentioned there's a number of these, you know, where it's very accusatory, very opinion, and the line of questioning maybe isn't necessarily questions. It's lawmakers, in this case in D.C., taking their time to kind of list their accusations or their opinions.
Right. And again, this is what happens in every committee meeting. It's sort of getting the information out to the public, making sure they hear it. In this case, it was, you know, a lot of what Walz and Ellison are alleged to have done by these lawmakers.
And there was a lot of talk, too, a lot of question about whistleblowers. Did you get to hear any of that?
Right,
too?
yeah.
That a number of whistleblowers, some of them still current employees in the Department of Human Services, and
I think there were about 30 whistleblowers that
that's
had
what
come
they
forward.
mentioned.
Some Democrats that was pointed out. Walz did not seem to know, but he made a point to say our whistleblower laws are very good in this state, but then the lawmakers would come back and say, yeah, but that didn't stop retaliation.
Well, a lot of questions asked about retaliation from the state, that the whistleblowers felt that by raising concerns they were being retaliated against, and Walz and Ellison both flatly said, well, that's illegal.
Right.
So again, still sort of at the end here, a lack of clarity about, well, was there retaliation? Did they perceive it? Was there, what actually occurred there that made them say we felt as though we were being retaliated
There was
against?
one woman who's been very outspoken about this along the way. She wasn't included, I don't think, in the hearing today, but she has said she was demoted, moved departments, you know, but is still working there and is still speaking out on her efforts to, you know, be a whistleblower on this issue. I will say that also in that exchange with Jim Jordan, and this was kind of interesting, he was talking about a Somali-American fraud investigator in the U.S. Attorney's Office who apparently has come out and said that there was a perception that forcefully...
In the Attorney General's office or U.S. Attorney's office?
U.S. Attorney's Office.
Okay.
Attorney General's Office, yeah, the U.S. Attorney General's Office, that there was a perception that forcefully tackling this issue might cause political backlash among the Somali community, which is a core voting bloc. And then it says, did that have anything to do with this whole fraud scheme that went on your state, Governor? And Walz says it did not, Congressman. But it is an interesting point to make that this is a whole nother issue with this, is it political?
And there are a lot of questions and sort of accusations too, where they actually asked, is investigating fraud racist?
Right.
And their answer was no. We should investigate fraud regardless. But what they're trying to get at is these accusations, or these, what whistleblowers or others have said, that there was a fear of political blowback or about being accused of racism. And I know that Ramsey County court case in the fall, late fall or early winter of 2020, that was some of the accusations made there by Feeding Our Future, is that they felt that this was racist because halting payments or approvals was affecting minority children. And so that kind of raised that specter too.
Right. But I think, again, to your point at the beginning of all this, is that, it's just so many questions. It's accusations, still not a lot of answers and clarity over the whole thing. I mean, it's you can sort of piece out what you want from it, but it's hard. I mean, this is difficult.
It's very difficult.
I will say real quick, they did enter into, for the record, this oversight committee report called The Cost of Doing Nothing, How Tim Walz and Keith Ellison Fueled Minnesota's Fraud Explosion. It's an interesting read, but they pointed out three things that were probably the focus of this, is that state leaders allegedly knew of the fraud, failed to act, billions in taxpayer dollars at risk or lost, and whistleblowers ignored payments continued due to non-legal concerns. So, there is that report entered. It was done in December of 2025.
Yeah. The other thing too, and I know we got to wrap up here, but the other thing too is that we talk about the amount of fraud, the $9 billion number that keeps being thrown out. The president has said 18 and sometimes he said 19 billion in his State of the Union. That $9 billion number was related to the former Deputy U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson in a news conference in December said that of the $18 billion spent during Tim Walz's tenure since 2018, maybe as much as half of that could be connected to fraud.
That's correct.
He didn't say $9 billion in fraud. He said it's possible half, and then that turned into what you see legislators or congressmen basically throw that out as a firm number, but that's one that's always been speculative.
Right. 18 is what it costs. 9 billion is a suspected fraud. That's it.
Yeah.
That's where that comes from. So it is not 18 billion at this point. So
they're still investigating and trying to put it together here. All right, Karen. Thank you. Good luck going through all this. It's a lot. It's a lot. All right, we got to take a quick break. I believe we are going to have a quick check of our forecast here as we get into more melting of snow, which I know you like.
Mine's almost gone. My yard is almost grass now.
We'll be right back.
Working our way out of the fog and into the sunshine, a harder go for some than others for the day-to-day, but that blue has always been up there waiting for us. Whether you got there fast or slow, well, that's entirely a slow-going process, but as we go on into the better part of our day-to-day, it's all about that climb and all about getting there and all about getting back to the 50s for the day today. We hit 51 yesterday, heading to those lower 50s as we go on into the afternoon. So again, working our way back into some sunshine, a high around 53 degrees, heading into our afternoon hours. A slow go for some rather than others, but again, the midweek mellow is certainly in play as we're warming on up into the better part of our afternoon. 55 tomorrow with partly sunny sky. We might see some more fog develop tonight and into tomorrow morning, and keeping the 50s going as rain comes on in here Thursday night and into the day on Friday. We might pop a couple of rumbles of thunder into Friday night, but we're also just as likely to see some snow coming on the backside of that. For northern Minnesota, we could see a wintry mix here in the metro early Saturday morning before we clear on out and have those temperatures fall back into the 40s by Saturday afternoon. We spring forward with daylight saving kicking in on Saturday night, so not only are we going to the 60s for a couple of days on Sunday and Monday with some decent sunshine, but we end up with a sunset after 7 o'clock for a couple of days, well, for the foreseeable future, starting on Sunday, but the cool down begins. 40s return on Tuesday for highs, and then reality sets in. If I had a day 8 on that forecast, there would be some 30s waiting for us by the middle of next week.
Last season.
for you.
Welcome back to All Day Live here on Fox 9 on this Wednesday. Again, Rob Wilson sitting in for Amy Hockert for the day. The Gopher women's basketball, well, they begin today in Indianapolis, and they have been doing great. The Gophers have a double bye, so they don't begin until Friday. A fourth seed, they would play either Michigan State, Wisconsin, or Illinois in the third round. Right now, the head coach is holding some availability before the team heads to Indy, so we're going to listen in.
We've got a few more days of trying to figure this all out, but the tournament begins today, so it's a lot of fun.
So you'll go and watch the games in person?
No, we won't. No.
When are you going to go then?
We'll go down the day before.
I guess it starts today, doesn't it?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So tomorrow we'll leave. Tomorrow is Thursday,
yes.
Is that right?
You've had some good luck in tournaments dating back to South Dakota. I mean, how's this team look coming in at the end of the season?
Well, I think this group is a group that is continuing to develop. I think they continue to look at things and understand things, and say, okay, well, in our ball screen coverage, our post has to come a little higher or drop down a little further. They're a team that kind of understands the game, and they want to keep getting better, and that's something that they're working on right now, and it's a lot of fun to watch them do that.
Don, when we first got here, I remember Mara was playing like an international 3-on-3 tournament. Very obviously, she's a rising star. Is that the injuries? How close is she to being kind of where she can be as a talent?
Well, I think Mara's right now kind of on this incline. I think she's playing and getting better all the time. And I think what is hard to put a value on is how important her leadership is on top of all of it. One, she's playing at a really high level, both ends of the court, but her leadership is something that has really been instrumental for us. So I think she's continuing to get better too.
And as far as her shot, how close? I mean, her shot is looking pretty good these days.
Her shot, her scoring around the rim, her strength, her defense, it all looks really good. I think she's playing at a really high level right now.
The way your team's constructed, how much do you think that going into tournament play where you're not just dependent on this player or that player, that really have anybody can go off on you overnight?
Yeah, ideally that it does one of two things for you. It sets you up to succeed because hopefully you can take what the defense is giving you, type of thing. And so they're playing off of this kid, well then she just shoots it, or they're forcing you to throw the ball inside, or we're attacking inside. And so it sets you up to have success against a lot of different styles. The hard part is, with some teams, it's kind of like, well, who will we defer to someone else? And the good news about this team is that hasn't been us. Yeah, our team hasn't really deferred to someone else to do a lot of it, and that's really important. Everybody has to have an attack mindset, but then you also have to recognize this time they're helping strong out of that corner. You just make a simple pass and kick to that corner rather than try to dribble through that because there's no place to go, type of thing. And so understanding when to do what is what this team has done a pretty good job of for the most part.
In your previous stops, did you have a best player? Someone who is undoubtedly your best player?
It all depends on the year, but in an ideal world, to have the versatility is something that's really, really valuable to have.
When Mara's full season as a freshman, she did everything. She was a point guard, she was a scorer. And she comes back, I think she was the leading scorer all until this year. Did you sense that it was hard, not hard, but she had to find her spot on a team that you got to know that Grace was a big scorer, Maya starts, is there anything there?
In terms of it
finding a
from
spot
her
with this?
No, she's had a spot and she's done really well with it. And I think she's been aggressive the whole season. I think she is now, understanding. But right now she's making more of those opportunities. But I don't know if her understanding is a lot different. I think she's been aggressive all year long. I think she's played at a really high level. She just is making shots at a higher level, if that makes sense at this point in time. But all the way through, the reason, again, a major reason why our team has had success is because of how she has led us in so many ways, regardless of if she's scoring a lot of points or if she's not our leading scorer. So I just think there's so much value in that. And I think, again, her best days are still coming right now. But did it take her a while to come back? Yeah, it did. It took her a while to come back after missing parts of 2 years. At the same time, I also think she was someone who wasn't trying to come back as the same player. She's trying to come back as a better player. And so now she attacks the rim at a higher level. She rebounds at a really high level, and so she's added parts to her game. And sometimes when you add different parts to your game, some other part isn't quite as, we're not just focused on, is she shooting it well? We're focused on all those other things.
When she was not playing, she was kind of the coach. She was always
How much time did you spend just talking to her about basketball, and how much do you think that might accomplish?
Mara loves talking about basketball, but she analyzes it, she studies it, she watches games, she texts you about what's going on in the game. She is an absolute basketball junkie, so I don't know that we had much to do with that at all. We're just trying to help her learn the game more and understand the game. But boy, I'll tell you what, when we will call it, whether it's a zone offense look, and she's like, okay, you're over there, and she just kind of takes care of it and gets things done because she understands it at a really high level.
When did you notice that she was a leader? When did that become a big part of her persona?
Well, I think because of who she was right from the beginning, she was naturally a leader for us. I think understanding how to really do that and embrace that took some time to figure out. I think the last 2 seasons, she's been a very good leader for us from the bench, right? But this year, I would say right from the beginning, on day 1 back in June, is just you notice that she was a leader who wasn't dependent on how she was playing, if that makes sense. You know, she was someone who was just always saying the right things, doing the right things, whether she was making shots, missing shots, whatever the case was.
She said that quote the other couple games ago too, where she said she would let things affect her, like a missed shot or whatever. Is that just maturity, or getting older, being more experienced, you kind of learn not to let those things drag you down?
Well, I've coached some players who never quite get that, so I'm not sure the maturity automatically does that. I just think it's something that Mara, again, she's a basketball junkie. She wants to be the very best. She wants to continue playing, and she's going to have a chance to do that. I believe that at a very, very high level, you know, provided she stays healthy and all those kind of things. But in order to be your best, you've got to grow your game in every way possible, and that's what she's doing, and she's doing it in leadership as well.
So you guys have done a good job publicly, whether you're ranked, unranked, all that, not really paying attention to it. But to be in that top 16 reveal here, is that something you're mindful of with your players talk to? Is it something, you know, the opportunity that is there for you guys?
Well, I was actually hopeful that they didn't see it right before the game at Illinois, because at that point in time, it's something that, you know, you want to have happen for your program, for your team. Thankfully, they didn't see it, because then that takes away from what your focus was at that point in time. I think for this team at this point in time, the body of work that they've put in is something that it's being recognized at a level where, you know, we're playing in the best conference by the metric system in women's basketball, and you can argue maybe the best conference ever in the history of college women's basketball based upon how many teams are ranked in the top 25 of the net, which used to be they had a different one at the RPI. When you look at teams right now looking at host sites, the Big Ten has the most, and so to be in that, to be able to play in the quarterfinals in the Big Ten tournament is something that this team has worked really, really hard to get to that point. So it's something I think they're aware of. But being aware of it and having that as our goal isn't what our goal is. Playing at a high level and getting better and having fun while we're doing that is what our goal certainly is. And so we focus on the process. Again, transition defense, ball screen coverages, scoring around the rim, passing, taking care of the ball, those type of things. And then just keep building from there and see where it leads.
And you are sure glad that you had the foresight to say, well, just in case, let's clear out Williams Arena for that week.
I did send a thank you to our text to our administration, because, you know, to have the confidence, the belief that our program at some point in time, meaning 1 year from now, be in a spot where maybe we could do that, was something that they had to kind of take a leap of faith on, that our program would be at that level this year. And so very thankful that they did do that. And so, yes, thank you to the people who made that happen.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
It feels like there's a lot of natural leaders.
So peek into it or not?
What is the impact of having a strong culture heading into the tournament?
Well, that's a great question, and I think what was really neat, you know, in terms of the comparison from the Michigan State game to the Illinois game, our last 2 games, when you looked at our bench, when you looked at our timeouts, when you saw those type of things in the Michigan State game, it was uncharacteristic. We weren't really the same for whatever reason. Who knows why? I don't know. Is it senior day? Is it because there was pressure? Is it because whatever? I don't know. We didn't have it. The other team played really well. We couldn't get it that day. But when you look at the leadership in the Illinois game and you go back and you watch the timeouts and you see the players having the communication of what it needed to have happen at that point in time, that's why this team is successful, right? Player-led programs, and which is what we've wanted to be since day one. But the hard part is, how do you lead if you don't really even understand what you're supposed to be leading or what that looks like? And to now have them be the ones to identify it. You can't we want our players to be able to problem solve, right? I think one of the first questions I asked our players when we got to Minnesota was, how many timelines do we get a game as coaches or as a team? They're like, I don't know, 4. We get 4, and you want to save as many of them as you can in women's basketball to advance the ball at the end of the game, or for whatever reason, you're ahead or you're behind, whatever the case is. You want to save as many as possible. So that means there's an awful lot of times during the course of the game that the players have to be able to make adjustments on their own. But they have to know how to be able to do that. They have to understand what that looks like, but they also have to have the confidence of doing that. And we tell them all the time, like, sometimes the spirit is going to move you as a player to go make a play and to go maybe double somebody. That isn't necessarily what's drawn up, but you have to trust your instincts in the game, and then that's great. But the other players have to make reads around you too, and they have to cover up at that point in time because you just left your player to go double somebody else. And so I think this team has learned how to communicate. They've learned how to make adjustments. They've learned how to help each other. And then they've learned if it doesn't work, well, then we better try something else at that point in time because that wasn't working very well. So problem solving is really big in our program, and they're doing that. And I think that's a major part of leading for this team.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep. All right, sounds good.
All right, listening into availability from the Gopher women's basketball coach ahead of the team's trip to the Big Ten tourney. They don't play for a couple of more days because of a double bye, which is don't have to tell you, that is a big deal. So they are looking really good heading into the Big Ten tournament and looking really good also heading into March Madness and in the NCAA tournament as well. So Ahmad Hicks is traveling to Indy for this, to cover this. Hopefully, if he's available, he'll be joining us in a little bit here to talk about this tournament again as the Gophers look to really express how good they are here. They've won so many games here in the last, 10 of the last 11 or so. We're going to take a quick break. A couple of things we're watching at the state capitol as well. We'll see where those shake out, and we'll be right back.
Feeling overwhelmed?
Welcome back to All Day, live on Fox 9. We're going to head over to the state capitol right now, where lawmakers are looking at various basically restrictions or ideas for how to govern autonomous vehicles. You may have heard of Waymo. They're trying to come into Minnesota. There's a giant bill I've been reading through here that's pages and pages about how to govern autonomous vehicles. So that's what they're talking about now, and we're going to listen into this for a little bit.
I would make that motion to move House File 5313 to the Commerce Committee, yes.
All right, so Bill 3513 has been moved to the Commerce Committee. We'll begin with the author's amendment, First Amendment. A12, it's from my understanding, the technical corrections. Mr. Chair, would you like to move that amendment?
I would move the A12 amendment. From the original revision, there's just kind of some sequential things, and so we'll move the A12 amendment.
Any discussion on this amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? The motion prevails. The amendment's adopted. Moving on to the A15 amendment. My understanding is that this is the one where it requires MnDOT to use existing resources. Mr. Chair, would you like to move that amendment?
I will move the A15 amendment, and there was a discussion in working on the bill. There would be some generally insignificant costs incurred by the Department of Public Safety and MnDOT. We will continue to work on the fiscal note as well, as I believe it's just received today. So this amendment has those departments working on the bill, and they believe that they can incur the cost within the department. That's what the A15 amendment does.
Discussion on the amendment. Representative Kraft, really quick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Chair Kosnick. So I like giving a wide lane to folks for an author's amendment and to put it in the form you want it. But this one seems like there's no fiscal note, and you're saying that that MnDOT has to take care of all the costs. It seems like more than a technical getting it in the form you want it.
Mr. Chair, response.
Working with MnDOT and the Department of Public Safety, I've contacted them both about this amendment, so it's not a surprise. But the incidental cost of MnDOT already has a connected autonomous vehicle department. The commissioner will testify a little bit later. The Department of Public Safety has some interactions with the incident response on that, so they've been notified that pretty insignificant, but we'll continue to revise and work on that as well. So again, I would renew the motion for the A15 amendment.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. Moving on to the next amendment, the author's amendment, the A14, or having to do with the airport, Mr. Chair. To-year amendment.
Thank you. The A14 amendment, and actually deals with the MAC, and this is brought to us from the Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport. There was language regarding airports. This just adds a little bit more clarifying language that they were hoping to have a better framework, and we would accept their suggestions, and so I move the A14 amendment.
Any discussion on this amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. The motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. All right, Mr. Chair, would you like to go to member amendments or to testifiers now?
I think it'd be best to have the testifiers share their support and concern and ideas, and we can start on there.
That sounds great, Mr. Chair. So
give them some heads up so that they can.
I will give you. I'm going to read them out. First, second, third. The first one up is the Commissioner of MnDOT, Nancy Dottenberger. We've got Thomas Kaiser next after her, and then Eric Hansen will be third. Please adjust your positions in this room accordingly for maximum speed and movement. Commissioner, please state your name for the record and begin your testimony.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Nancy Daubenberger, and I'm the Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Transportation. And I am joined today by my colleague, Mr. Thomas Johnson Kaiser. He is not planning to testify, but he is here to help answer questions that you might have for us. And Thomas is with our MnDOT's Connected Automated Vehicle Policy and Planning Manager role. So first, MnDOT appreciates the Representative Kosnick's bill and the discussion around automated vehicles. And we very much appreciate Representative Kosnick and Representative Cagle's active participation as ex officio members of the Governor's Council on Connected and Automated Vehicles. MnDOT's always looking for ways to advance technology and to enhance our transportation system by making things safer, increasing transportation options for the people of Minnesota, especially for those who are unable to drive themselves, and providing economic development opportunities. Tara Olds, the MnDOT director of our Office of Connected and Automated Vehicles, or CAV office, shared at your February 18th hearing that MnDOT worked in partnership with our Governor's Council on Connected and Automated Vehicles to help Minnesota plan and prepare for automated vehicles over the last year. MnDOT and the Council undertook a process to prepare for future legislative discussions on this topic. Our work included looking at AV laws around the country and surveying over 20 states, identifying the top and common themes included in legislation and discussion, identifying gaps in our own state laws and identifying needs within those laws, engaging with over 70 stakeholders to understand differing goals and perspectives, and developing council recommendations on how Minnesota should develop AV policy to address our state's needs and opportunities. And this not only includes the governor's the Governor's Council recommended approach, but also acknowledges and documents differing approaches and differing perspectives of CAV Council members. These recommendations can be found on MnDOT's CAV website. We believe that fully automated vehicles will be a part of Minnesota's very near transportation future, and clear rules and regulations governing the operation of automated vehicles are needed. We appreciate the spirit of Representative Cagle's bill. Based on the council recommendations, there are a few areas we feel need further discussion, including requiring any automated vehicle operator to apply for and receive a permit from MnDOT prior to operating, which is renewed annually. In the permitting process, automated vehicle operators should be required to define their operational design domain. Specifying a detailed enforcement plan and process that empowers the state to suspend, revoke, or cancel the permit of any automated vehicle operator that endangers the public or fails to comply with the requirements of an automated vehicle permit. And clarifying the roles that remote assistance and teleoperations play in automated vehicle operations, and requiring any fully automated vehicle to be registered as an automated vehicle with the Department of Public Safety. We welcome the opportunity to continue the discussion on automated vehicle policy with the bill authors and with the Department of Public Safety as well. We believe policy can be developed to ensure safety on our roadways while also helping Minnesota realize the potential benefits of automated vehicles. And thank you for allowing me to testify. I stand for questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next up, we have Eric Hansen. And then after Eric, we've got Adam Lane and then Cole Davies.
And Mr. Chair, I would note, thank you, Commissioner, for your comments and the department for working on this important technology. They did reach out to us, not in time to incorporate some of those suggestions, so we weren't able to put that together, but I have offered to continue to meet with them as early as this Friday.
Yeah, so if we can, as our testifiers are going, get into a position where you can take that next seat when you're called upon to go. Mr. Hansen, please state your name for the record and begin your testimony.
Thank you. My name is Eric Hansen. I'm the CEO of Southwest Transit in Eden Prairie. We're one of the replacement service providers, the so-called opt-outs in the suburbs of the Twin Cities. There's really three things I want to talk about very briefly. One is how our system works, because we do currently operate an autonomous vehicle system in Eden Prairie and have for the last 11 months. A little bit about kind of what this means in terms of our safety, as well as why this bill is important. So we started operating our system under a contract with May Mobility as a company out of Michigan. They also operate another system in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, and have been doing that for about 4 years. And we started operating on April 15th of last year. So almost a year into this, and we've transported 27,000 people and gone about 112,000 total miles with this system. It's 7 square miles around what is going to be the terminus for the Green Line at Southwest Station. That is a mobility hub that includes bus service and other microtransit, as well as the train will in about another year. And ultimately, from our perspective, we think it's going pretty well. A couple of reasons why we think that. First of all, we do a thumbs up, thumbs down survey in the app that we use, that people use to hail the ride, because it's a microtransit service, and so it's on demand. And the average person waits about 14 minutes to get that ride, which is pretty fast when you consider that it's a shared ride service in a transit environment. 96% of the people that give us feedback on that app are giving us a thumbs up and telling us they like the service. We were very concerned when we started the service, because we had an existing microtransit service as it was anyway. What is this going to look like from a safety standpoint? Are people going to like it? Or are they going to say, oh, we don't know what this is, technology is, we're not so sure. But it's kind of amazing that we actually have significantly more ridership, about 140% compared to a year ago in this zone when we implemented this new service compared to the microtransit service that it replaced. So very, very popular service. The second thing we were concerned about was safety. It's the same thing that people have already been talking about in the first place.
Mr. Hansen, if you're going to have 3 things, you need to hurry up.
Sorry. I will say this real quickly. We've had no accidents. We operate about 40 to 60% in autonomy at this point. And the reason why we do that is because with an operator in the vehicle, is because it is important for us to test the system and know exactly what it means before you go completely driver out. And that's why it's important to have a bill like this at the end of the day, because you want to make sure that there's consistent regulations. You want to make sure that you have legitimate, people who really know what they're doing, because this is an emerging technology. You don't want to, you don't want to put people's lives at risk with something like this. And so we want to be very careful about what we do. And so it's a process. And we're very happy that we're part of this process, because this is something that can be a huge benefit, for the transit community. Our service is also completely accessible. Every single one of these vehicles has a wheelchair lift in it as well, and so we transport a number of people who have those needs. It's gone pretty well.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hansen.
Thank you.
Next, we got Adam Lane. After him is Cole Davies, then Alex Smith. Thank you so much, Mr. Lane, for being in your position right now, ready to go. Could you please state your name for the record and begin your testimony?
Yes, hi there. Adam Lane. I'm a state and local public policy manager with Waymo. Good afternoon, Chair Kosnick, Chair Tabke, and honorable members of the committee. My name is Adam Lane. As I mentioned, I'm the state and local public policy manager for Waymo. I appreciate you letting us testify today in support of HF 3513. I want to begin by extending our gratitude to Chair Kosnick for serving as the chief author of this legislation, and for the 7 other members of this committee who have signed on as co-sponsors. The legislation is a vital step towards getting autonomous vehicles and their proven safety, accessibility, and economic benefits to Minnesota. By passing House File 3513, Minnesota will join more than half the country in enacting a clear framework for commercial deployment of autonomous vehicles. This creates regulatory certainty for companies like Waymo and others to invest in your communities, improve road safety, and offer new mobility options for Minnesotans. We are an autonomous driving technology company with a mission to be the world's most trusted driver. Today, we operate a fully autonomous ride-hailing service in over 10 metropolitan areas across the United States, and we complete over 400,000 paid trips every single week. We're also expanding our service to new cities, including Denver, Detroit, Las Vegas, San Antonio, San Diego, and we also have international operations beginning in London and Tokyo. The Waymo Driver, our autonomous driving system, completes over 4 million miles on a weekly basis. That is 6 human lifetimes every 7 days. And just 2 weeks ago, we reached a new milestone where we've driven over 200 miles fully autonomously. After 127 million miles, we compared our driving to human-driven equivalents and found that we are experiencing 90% fewer serious injury-causing crashes when compared to human drivers. These statistics are highly encouraging and remind us of the important contributions this technology can have to safety. We're incredibly proud of that safety record we've achieved, and the fact that as we speak today, thousands of Americans, many of whom cannot drive their own vehicle, will use our service in their daily lives. We believe that House File 3513 creates a strong framework for AV deployment that balances regulation and innovation. We're extremely grateful for the work that MnDOT and the CAV Council have already completed on this to lay the foundation for the legislation. We look forward to being part of the solution to reduce traffic injuries and fatalities in Minnesota. Thank you, and I respectfully request your support on HF 3513.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lane. Next, we have Cole Davies, then Alex Smith, then Ken Rogers. Mr. Davies, would you please state your name for the record and begin your testimony?
Hello, my name is Cole Davies. I'm 23 years old, graduated from St. John's University last spring, and I've been on the board of directors for the Epilepsy Foundation of Minnesota since the beginning of 2023. At my core, I'm someone who has always sought independence and wanted to help others. Examples from my preteen years include when I was 11 and started pushing so hard to learn how to drive, and at the same age when I started caring for my newborn brother. I was so involved, he called me Mama once he learned to speak. When I turned 15, I had my first of hundreds of seizures. My seizures could be described as particularly violent, and that type of thing can be pretty detrimental to someone's independence and their ability to care for others. Driving a car or carrying a baby are just not options anymore. Not being able to legally drive means a lot in my life. It means that in the chaotic job search after college, I repeatedly had to make the choice between missing an interview or spending a third of my money on transportation to and from an interview for a job I'm not likely to get. Not driving is the main thing that makes it so difficult for me to get the medications that keep me alive, and not driving is a major factor in what makes it so difficult for me to get to Mayo, the only place capable of handling my care. It's a 158-mile journey from St. Joseph to Rochester, and I just can't bike that. I've been beyond fortunate to be surrounded by amazing people in my life, and I have even had access to strangers who want to do amazing things for me. That's not even bringing up my wife yet, who, no offense to everyone else who has ever lived, but there's no way someone else is a better spouse. These people in my life are how I have been able to get to job interviews, obtain medications, and make it to important appointments. Even with the people around me, it is still very difficult to get from one place to another. Plus, everybody here needs to understand that not everyone has access to the type of support that I have had. From what I have seen among people like me, my situation is very rare. My not being able to drive is an issue every single day, not just in the cases of getting to an interview, picking up a medication, or going to the doctor. In fact, it was already an issue today. I had to go through several options before I found a maybe, and even then, I didn't know I'd actually be able to get here until an hour before I had to leave. Not being able to legally drive is what causes my drive to work, which is 15 minutes away, to take an hour and a half of working every day, because it takes me an hour in the car, or half an hour in the car to get there, and then my wife spends an hour going there, going back, going there, and going back. Not driving keeps me from heading to the store and coming back 10 minutes later because something was forgotten. Not driving means my wife has to run every errand. Not being able to drive means I will never be able to go out on a diaper run, never be able to make that quick trip to the grocery store and pick up that thing, and never be able to tell my wife, you stay here, I'll pick up the kids from X, Y, or Z. A reliable, easily accessible mode of transportation capable of taking me exactly to where I need to be.
All right, we've been listening into a committee hearing at the state capitol discussing regulation of autonomous vehicles. Waymo is one of those. They have been testing vehicles in the Twin Cities as they hope to expand into Minnesota. There has certainly been pushback to some concerns raised by lawmakers and drivers of ride-sharing vehicles too, who concern about them taking business away, but also concerns from lawmakers about safety here. And this testimony here is about the bill that would regulate how these operate in Minnesota if they are approved to do so. We got Ahmad Hicks on deck talking about the Big Ten tourney. Go for women traveling there, and we'll play on Friday. We'll chat with him coming up next on All Day.
This
Welcome back to All Day Live on this Wednesday. Rob Olson sitting in for Amy Hockert today, and joining us now, hot off the airplane to Indianapolis, is Ahmad Hicks. Appreciate you taking some time. Did you just get there?
Yeah, we landed, I think, at 11 something your guys' time, and had to camp out a little bit for our hotel room. So we just got in less than 35 minutes ago.
All right. Well, there to cover the Gopher women's basketball team at the Big Ten tourney. They don't play now till Friday because they got the double bye. Let's talk about how significant that is to get the double bye, to play so well that they've advanced further into the tournament without having to take the court.
It means a lot. I mean, for a lot of these teams, you talk about Mara Braun, the Maya Battle, a couple of players that have been on this Gophers team for 3 to 4 years now. No offense to Lindsay Whalen when she was the head coach, but they weren't even sniffing day 3 of the tournament. They were playing on days 1 and 2, and they were done after days 1 and 2. So to forego day 1 and 2 and advance to day 3, that means a lot, because you know what that means? You're 1 win away from going to the semifinals. Then you're 2 wins away from playing for a conference championship. So this team is right where they needed to be. They worked extremely hard this year to earn that double bye. Now they just have to go out there and make sure they don't squander the opportunity on Friday and lose and, put all that hard work that they did to rest earlier this year.
Yeah, well, and the hard work, what did they won 10 of the last 11 games, and they've won 13 in the Big Ten this year, which I think I read that's the first time in
a long time for them.
Yeah, I had it here somewhere. First time in a long time. Let's just say, that they have been really on fire.
They have been, and I think we all knew this was coming when head coach Dawn Plitzer-White was announced a couple of years ago when AD Mark Coyle hired her. You just looked at her resume, and everywhere she had gone, they won. And her most recent stop, West Virginia, she was there for 1 season. She took that team to the NCAA tournament. At South Dakota, she had a Sweet 16 run there, and they went to the tournament multiple times. I think her longest gap of not making it to the NCAA tournament as a head coach was 3 years. This is her 3rd year at Minnesota right now, and her team's on pace to make it to the tournament. So this is just a testament of how hard these ladies have worked under her, how well she's recruited amid this NIL portal and been able to retain players. And then it just speaks volumes to the players that they have on the team. It's a veteran-led team, and they're playing the right way, and they're playing their best basketball entering March. And that's exactly what they said they wanted to do.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I just looked it up here. The last time they got 13 Big Ten victories was the 84-85 season. So it's been a long time. So, what will you be watching here over the next couple of days before the Gophers take the court that would maybe help inform, what they may be facing heading into this tournament?
Paying close attention to the Indiana-Nebraska game that's coming up at 2:30 here today. So the winner of that game will go on to face Ohio State tomorrow, who's a top 10 team in the NCAA this season. And the winner of that Ohio State, Nebraska-Indiana game then will go on to go take on the Gophers. So this being said, though, the Gophers played all 3 of those teams that I just mentioned. They're 3-0 versus all those teams this year. They beat Ohio State and Indiana, I believe, by about 13 points apiece, and then Nebraska, I think they beat by 20-plus points. So they've done exactly what they needed to do. The Ohio State win was on their home court at Williams Arena. So can they beat a team like that, a top 15 team, at a neutral site where you don't have the barn behind you? That's to be determined. But, that's what I'm going to be watching the next couple of days, how those teams in front of them rank and how they match up, and what we're going to be looking for on Friday.
Yeah, and how does this set them up for then heading into the NCAA tournament? They're firing on all cylinders here as we head into March Madness.
Yeah, so I actually was speaking with one source close to this team, and I said, so tell me what needs to happen in order for you guys to host the first 2 rounds of the NCAA women's tournament at Williams Arena. And he said nothing. He said, we pretty much have that locked up. He said, all we have to do is make sure that we don't go out here and lose to a team that's ranked below 15. So if Ohio State gets to that game on Friday, well, you could say they're locked up to host a NCAA tournament first and second round game should they make it to the second round. All they have to do is have a strong performance here. This week just brings momentum, so if they can gather some momentum heading into the NCAA tournament, this is huge for them. But their spot seems to be locked up, not only in the NCAA tournament, but hosting two games at the Barn should they win their first round matchup.
All right. Ahmad, how long are you going to be out there?
We're here for a while.
Flights. Ahmad, thanks so much for joining us. Have fun out there.
No problem. Thanks, Rob.
All right, Ahmad Hicks in Indy to cover the Big Ten tournament. All right, we've got, about a minute left in the show here. And Kara, I guess, what do we want to talk about here? As we, 45 seconds. Okay, well, obviously, a lot going on today that we'll have later coming up on Fox 9 News beginning at 5 p.m. Certainly, as we heard from Karen Scullin, she's trying to digest everything with the Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison testimony in Washington, D.C. today. Certainly, I'm sure Jim Rich will be talking more about last night's big win for the Wild and where that sets them up as they head on the road here, as they get down the stretch here towards the NHL playoffs, which will be coming up sooner than you think, and of course high school hockey tournament beginning today at Grand Casino Arena. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. See you later.